So, picture this. I'm in this little bistro in Lyon. You know, the kind of place that feels like the real heart of the French middle class. And the news comes on about a new budget proposal. And the mood? It wasn't angry. Not really. It was just tired. Absolutely exhausted. And that feeling, it's spreading all across France. And believe me, it points to a much, much bigger story. All right, let's get into it.
A guy at the table next to me, he just kind of muttered this to his wife while looking at the paper. And you could tell he wasn't just talking about another tax increase. He was talking about a feeling that something fundamental is just broken. And that feeling, the sense that the government is demanding the impossible from people who have nothing left to give, that is the absolute core of the crisis in France today.
And look, this isn't just talk you overhear in a cafe anymore. This question, is France the new sick man of Europe? It's being asked, and asked seriously in the halls of power in Brussels, in Berlin, and yeah, on Wall Street. So in this explainer, we're going to break down the three pillars of this crisis, the things that are pushing France right to the edge. And we're going to explore why this is a massive warning sign for the rest of the Western world. Okay, let's start with pillar number one, the fiscal warning. Because this whole story really begins with the numbers. The cold, hard math is what's feeding this deep anxiety right at the heart of the French government. It all starts with this number right here, 57%. That is the slice of France's entire economy, its GDP, that the government spends. Think about that. More than half of every single thing produced in the entire country gets funneled through the public sector. We're talking pensions, healthcare, a huge civil service, the whole shebang. So is 57% a lot? Oh, you bet it is. Let's put it in context. As you can see on this chart, the average for other big advanced economies, the OECD countries, is way down at around 43%. That 14-point gap is absolutely enormous. It represents this massive social model that is now smashing headfirst into economic reality. And that reality is all about debt. This year, just this year, France is on track to spend 67 billion euros just on interest payments. Now let me be crystal clear, that's not paying off the actual debt. Nope, that's just the fee for borrowing the money in the first place. And that number, it's exploding. To give you an idea of how insane that is, that interest payment is basically a black hole sucking money out of the budget. It's more than they spend on anything else besides education and defense. It's money that can't go to new hospitals, can't go to better roads, can't go to innovation. It's a permanent drain that just gets bigger and bigger every single year.
And here's the kicker. The markets are really starting to get nervous. I mean, look at this. Investors who lend money to governments now see French debt as riskier than the debt from Greece, Portugal, and Spain. Wow. Just think about that. A few years ago, France was the one lecturing those countries about being responsible. This is a complete and pretty stunning reversal.
And this nervousness has real consequences. The big ratings agency Fitch actually downgraded France's credit. And they said exactly why: political chaos and no clear plan to get the debt under control. And a downgrade like that, well, it just makes it even more expensive for France to borrow money, throwing them deeper into that vicious cycle.
Which brings us perfectly to our second pillar, the sovereignty crisis. See, the money problem is made almost impossible to fix because the French state itself is losing its power to actually do anything about it. It's trapped by problems at home and constraints from abroad.
You know, France has this long, famous history of a powerful central government that directs the economy. Back in the day, after World War II, you had these powerful commissions that could literally command industries. But over the years, all that power has just fizzled away. Now, those bodies are just advisory committees. They can suggest things, but they can't direct anything. It's like the state's economic steering wheel has been replaced with a suggestion box.
And you can see this failure in action. Remember during the pandemic when there was all this talk about bringing industry and manufacturing back home? Well, the French government put up a ton of money for it. And the result? Take a look. Out of 531 subsidized projects, only 33 were ever actually finished. I mean, that is a staggering rate of failure.
And at the same time, the state's hands are tied from the outside too. One of the core, foundational rules of the European Union is the free movement of capital. What that means in simple terms is, if France tries to raise taxes on its richest people to fill that budget gap, well, those people can just pack up their money and themselves and move to a lower tax country in the EU. Belgium, Portugal, you name it. Paris has effectively lost the ability to fully control its own tax base.
So just to recap, we've got a massive fiscal crisis and a crisis of state power. But now we get to the third pillar, and this is what turns a really bad problem into a potential catastrophe. Because on top of this already broken system, France, and really the whole West, is piling on two new absolutely crushing costs.
The country has to, at the exact same time, pay for a radical green energy transition that's being mandated by the EU and pay for a huge military rearmament because of, well, the scary new world we live in. Now, either one of these would be a massive, once-in-a-generation challenge. France is trying to do both at once, while it's already basically broke.
And just look at how these costs fall on regular people. For the poorest 10% of French families, the upfront cost of buying a required electric car is 213% of their entire annual income. That's not a typo, more than double everything they make in a year.
And it's the same deal for their homes. The cost to do a mandated energy-saving retrofit on their house? 146% of their annual income. And remember, these aren't just suggestions. These are things the government is saying people have to do. It's simply impossible for a huge chunk of the population.
So what happens? What do you think happens when you force costs like this on people who literally cannot pay? You get a massive political backlash, you get a rejection of the entire system, you get protests like the yellow vests, and you get that man in the bistro saying the veins are already dry. This is where that feeling comes from.
So how on earth does the government get out of this trap? Well, the government's own official think tank, a group called France Stratégie, laid out 4 possible levers they could pull. The only problem? Every single one of them is basically a dead end.
Let's just run through these impossible choices real quick. Okay, option 1, cut spending. Well, that's politically suicidal. The whole country exploded when Macron just barely touched the retirement age. Option 2, raise taxes. As we saw, the wealthy can just leave and it crushes the working class. Option 3, boost growth and employment. Great idea. But that takes years, even decades of deep reform. It doesn't solve a crisis that's happening right now. And finally, option 4, use joint EU debt. A clever idea? Maybe, but good luck getting countries like Germany to agree to that. They are totally, completely, and utterly stuck.
So why does this story, which started in a bistro in Lyon, matter to you, whether you're in London or Washington or anywhere else? It's because what's happening in France isn't just a French problem, it's a Western problem. France is just experiencing it first, and with way more intensity. France is the canary in the coal mine. It is showing us exactly what happens when you get this collision of massive public debt, a state that's lost its ability to act, and these huge, unequally shared costs of mandatory transformations all hitting at the very same time. And this all leads us to one final, really unsettling question. The crisis in France forces all of us to ask, is the entire post-war Western social model, the one built on high spending, generous benefits, and debt that we assumed could grow forever, is that model even sustainable anymore? Not in this new world of high interest rates and massive new costs. What happens when the veins really do run dry for everyone?
If you want to keep digging into the big issues that are shaping our world, make sure you subscribe for more data-driven explainers just like this one. Thanks so much for watching.